the Cityscape Bar in the Holiday Inn Chicago Mart Plaza. I'm Natasha Korecki, and this is Off Message, our weekly political talk show. Joining me this week, we have Kate Grossman, editorial writer, columnist Mark Brown, and our investigative reporter and columnist, Dan Mihalopoulos. Let's shift first to what just happened with the transfer of land that Rahm is pushing for now for the Obama Library. So this is controversial move. People have strong feelings on both sides. The Friends of the Parks are up in arms because he's only proposing replacing 5 acres of the 21
or 22.
Do they have a point, these Friends of the Parks people?
Well, the Friends of the Park aren't just mad that this mayor only wants to replace 5 of the 22 acres or 21, but they don't want any parkland at all. They don't want the Obama Library to be situated on parkland. They argue that there's plenty of other land and that this sets this very dangerous precedent of giving up precious parkland. And they have a point. Of course, you don't want to give up parkland, but you know what we've argued on the editorial board is that this is by definition an exception. You know, how often does Barack Obama come knocking on your door to say, hello, I want a presidential library? And clearly the Obama Foundation, which is making the decision about where the library is going to go, wants it on one of these 2 spaces, or else University of Chicago would not be proposing these parkland. So we've said, yes, it's a potential slippery slope, but we think this is an exception, and the library can go on parkland, and particularly the way the city ordinance is going to be written, it can only take 5 of the 20 acres of parkland. The rest has to remain open. But there's no question the Friends of the Park will sue, and this could be a problem.
Well, I mean, is that really fair, though? I mean, like you say, this is a once-in-a-lifetime kind of thing, on the one hand. But on the other, he did do this with the George Lucas Museum. He's got an issue with that, too. So is he setting a trend here? Yeah,
there was an issue several years ago also with the Grant Park, part of Grant Park that was going to go to the Children's Museum. Children's Museum never got the money together to do that, but they did win approval from the city council, and so there are a lot of exceptions. That time it was for the kids, and for George Lucas it's, you know, so we can beat San Francisco. And now with the Obama Presidential Library, I'm not saying it's akin at all to those other situations, but there is more than one exception that is being sought to this general rule.
I never like taking parkland. It's just a slippery slope, and there's just always people with different schemes. Oh, well, that would be a better, you know, but we can't let this Obama Library get away from us here, you know, through our internal political strife. And, you know, personally, what I've liked to have seen the University of Chicago acquire some land, you know, abutting the park for this, you know, that would have been best in my mind. But I think we got to make this happen, and I think that's where the mayor must be on this. I mean, he knows that. Bottom line is he can't let this get away.
So politically speaking, going into the mayoral race election February 24th, I mean, he can't let this get away on the one hand, but does it also breed some more discontent from people on the South Side who feel like, well, he's just kind of the lakefront mayor, he's the, you know, he cares about the downtown and not the South Side and the West Side.
Certainly some of his opponents believe that it is an issue that they can use against him. Bob Fioretti, who voted for the Children's Museum to go in Grant Park, is trying to use this as an issue. I believe Chuy Garcia was also in saying that, you know, why should we give away parkland? But the aldermen around there are also up for re-election, and the aldermen around there are for it. I think the best idea that I've heard for really doing a Chicago-style strong-arm deal here was from Joe Cahill and Cranes, who said, okay, we'll give you the University of Chicago the parkland, you give us a trauma center. Now that would really help. I thought that would certainly make it clear that there's a big public benefit in exchange for that land.
Let's switch quickly to some of the ads that that Rahm has out now that's caused a little bit of controversy. He's tapping. You know, Ron Majors is, you know, a very prominent anchor in Chicago. He's appearing in one of them. He's making it look like it's an endorsement, and he had kind of used a mock-up Chicago Magazine, and they were a little, so all these media organizations are sort of saying, well, wait a minute, we aren't endorsing you. So what's Rahm trying to do here, and is it going to work?
this is pretty standard approach these days, is to take real news. The Chicago Magazine, that's a mailer. I don't, would people really be fooled by that? I don't know. I haven't not laid hands on it myself. Everybody's pushing the limits of that kind of stuff these days, and apparently he's, maybe got a little too slick for his own good. I don't know that he stepped over a line from what I've seen.
I think it's a tempest in a teapot, a media tempest in a teapot, which are the most, smallest tempests in any teapot.
Nobody cares about offending the media anyway. And this week, Mark, you sat down with Willie Wilson, very colorful candidate for mayor. He wrote an autobiography. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, he's definitely not polished up for sort of his spot in prime time here, but he's I enjoyed talking with him. He's a regular guy in his own way, and he wrote this autobiography that it's not, he wrote it 7 years ago, which he clearly wasn't thinking about it running for politics then, because it's got all kinds of embarrassing, what I would think are embarrassing little things that most politicians wouldn't want to have out there. But he wrote the book as to be inspirational. There's stuff in here about the time his ex-wife, he says, hit him in the head with a clothes iron, and he turned around and punched her. He's got 2 children out of wedlock, neither of which he has relationships with. He doesn't have relationships with his daughter from his marriage. I mean, it's a messy life that Willie's led, but it's a Christian story about how he has got to where he is today, which he would say is a much better place.
And it is quite the rags to riches story, isn't it? It's
a good read. I also took a stroll through it. I mean, he comes from an upbringing as a son of sharecroppers in cotton fields in Louisiana, to living in a penthouse apartment down here, and being, by his accounts, a multimillionaire. Although I am really looking forward to seeing his tax returns. I think he's talking about how much money he's given away and how much money he has. Clearly he has money. I mean, he put $1 million into his own campaign recently, but I'd like to see his tax returns. I'm not sure that he's aware that that's part of the process here, or maybe his friend Bruce Rauner told him you don't have to, attach all the schedules to it like Bruce Rauner did in his campaign. But I'm really looking forward to taking a closer look at him. I think right now I'm going to do him a favor and set the bar really low for the debate. He told Mark that he didn't want to prepare for the debate, and I told his aides that. That's a pretty bad idea, I think, on his part. His questionnaires, has he turned his questionnaire yet into, when I looked on our website most recently, he had not yet turned it in. He did turn one into the Tribune, right, and it was farcical. So I'm going to set the bar really low for him. I think it's going to be entertaining for some of us to see him in this debate, in this first debate. It could be pretty bad.
Oh, the debates are going to be pretty fascinating, don't you think? I mean, with Rahm Emanuel, Chewy, Fiorretti.
Well, yeah, because they're such an array of personalities. Right. I mean, Rahm is so tightly wound and tightly controlled in his number 1, number 2, number 3, and then Fiorretti, who knows what's going to come out of his mouth, and Willie Wilson. I mean, really, we have no idea what he's going to say. So it certainly will not be boring.
So let's go back to Fiorretti this week. You wrote about Mike Ditka contributing to him, and perhaps the first Democratic money that Ditka has exchanged. And Ditka stood up and gave him the endorsement, but it didn't seem like Mike Ditka really knew Fiorretti that well. No,
I think it was an odd couple. I mean, Ditka knows that Rahm is a Democrat, served 2 presidents. I think he doesn't like Democrats. As he told you, he's, very, very conservative. And Fiorretti has positioned himself during his 8 years as an alderman and in this campaign, despite the fact that he's supported some Republicans himself in the past, he's positioned himself as progressive, and he's made fun of Rahm as being a Republican. So here he is standing up with this kind of arch conservative. And, Ditka kind of backed down from his initial criticism of Rahm. Maybe he's afraid for his liquor license at Ditka's or health inspections. I don't know. But no, seriously, I think in the end, when you ask him that he's supporting a progressive here, I think he was surprised to learn that Fiorretti is a progressive.
It was almost as if Fiorretti was trying to hide that fact. Because when I said, well, he's a progressive, as soon as the word came out of my mouth, then Fiorretti interjected, well, that means inclusive. It means inclusive. He was saying to Ditka.
Oh, it's inclusive. Everyone's a
And
progressive. Except for Ditka.
Yeah, what's Ditka's motivation here? He obviously didn't do his homework. I mean, what's he up to?
He doesn't say that he has a profound relationship with Fiorretti. He says Fiorretti has come into his restaurant, which is just outside of the boundaries of Fiorretti's ward. It's actually in the 42nd ward, I think.
I had a theory on that this morning. Could they share the same hairdresser? Men who dye their hair? I don't know.
Okay, before we switch, let's quickly get to the Rickey Hendon story of the week. I'm going to make you talk about it. So, what is Rickey Hendon up to, and why is he putting these radio ads on the radio that talk about enemas?
Well, Rickey Hendon is working for Willie Wilson after a brief time with Bob Fioretti earlier in the campaign before Wilson decided to run for mayor. He helped Wilson get on the ballot. He's helping some other candidates on the South Side, some incumbents, also working against a number of incumbents. So he got on the radio and he declared that he took out an ad, as he said, with my own damn money, and said that it's time for an enema in the black community, meaning flush, and that's the word that he used, flush the black incumbents out, and he named a number of them. Howard Brookins, Walter Burnett, who he was once friends with, who I think was his alderman at one time, and just started yelling about them.
It's time for an enema in the black community. This is Rickey Hendon. That's why I'm paying for this commercial with my own damn money.
Let's quickly get to Jesus Chuy Garcia. He spoke at the City Club of Chicago this week. It was somewhat striking to me that at one point, Jay Doherty, the president of the City Club, says, who's elected officials, please stand up. He does this every time there's a City Club luncheon. And it was like this very uncomfortable, anyone in the first row, anyone in the second row, and no one ever stood up. So,
wow.
Interesting.
So, what does that tell you about Chuy's candidacy?
Well, it might suggest he doesn't have a lot of support among the electeds. The most generous is that they weren't there at the luncheon, and that they. But I don't. Did you see electeds in the audience?
I did not.
Okay.
Of course, Karen Lewis was there, and she's a Chicago Teacher Union president, who's very, well known and prominent. So she was in the front table, right up in front. So it did seem like there was a contingent of union support, which obviously is where most of his money is. We're in the midst of a campaign. Are we in a real race right now for mayor, or does Rahm have this?
I think the biggest question right now, according to the polls, really is Rahm going to go to a runoff or not? And I think looks like he's on the borderline. Hasn't spent a ton of his money yet. He started to spend his money, clearly started to spend down his huge stash, but still has millions of dollars that Chuy Garcia won't have, that Willie Wilson may or may not have, or may or may not spend. I think Wilson's biggest role in here might be if he can get enough of the African American vote to maybe push Rahm into a runoff. That would probably be, by all accounts, against Chuy Garcia. But even the union vote, or the union support, I should say, is split. Rahm has gotten a lot more union support than he got 4 years ago.
I think there is a real race going out there, and I think we need to understand that, because a runoff would be a really real race. So it's very, but nobody's catching fire. Nobody's getting any traction, and that's because so much these days is dependent on media advertising, television advertising. I do think there's some word of mouth going on out there, and there's still, the mayor, has this unfavorable rating that he has to still overcome. So, my question is, are people going to get out and vote? Will they get out and vote against the mayor? Usually you want to vote for somebody.
Right. Okay, well, let's switch to quotes of the week. Why don't we start with you, Dan?
My quote of the week comes from Coach Ditka when you asked him, what's he doing supporting a progressive like Fiorretti? He wanted to clarify that he's far to the right of Attila the Hun.
I'm going to read right from Willie Wilson's autobiography. I confess I was angry and I had a gun. That's a bad combination. So I unloaded the weapon before I waved it at her and escorted her out of my house. That's him getting rid of a girlfriend who had cheated on him once too often. You don't get that in many political biographies.
At least he unloaded the gun, I guess.
That's a wise guy.
Mine is a sports one. So there's a lawsuit. The Wrigley Field rooftop owners are suing the Cubs, and allegedly, Crane Kenney, who's the president of business operations, said, quote, "We control the city." He was trying to allegedly strong arm the rooftop owners into compliance.
I wonder what Rom thinks about that one. And I'm going to give mine to Chewy for his standing up in front of the City Club and announcing that come February, this race will be a real race for mayor. Just in case anyone forgot that right now, it is ongoing. Thank you very much to our panel this week, and thank you for joining us on Off Message.